already Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball. Come out to the ballpark this week as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Charleston Dirty Birds May 5th through the 10th. Grab the kids and come on out. We kick it off on Tuesday, May 5th with Cinco de Baseball with $5 tickets and $5 food and beverage specials. And we end the week as we celebrate all moms on Mother's Day. Moms get in free. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats. This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, I heard an interview with President Barack Obama with CBS's Late Show host, Stephen Colbert. Remember him? He at one time was funny. Now they've canceled his show because the ratings are so poor. But Obama actually warned that America must never allow the Attorney General to become the president's consigliere. Let's listen to Barack Obama.
Well, there are a couple that I followed even though they weren't law. And I want us, we're going to have to do some work to return to this basic norm, and we probably now have to codify it. The White House shouldn't be able to direct the Attorney General to go around prosecuting whoever the president wants to prosecute.
Right, because technically it's under the executive branch. Technically, the norm is that it's independent.
The idea is that the Attorney General is the people's lawyer. It's not the president's consigliere.
Right, even when it's Bobby Kennedy.
It's Bobby Kennedy. And so two of the core principles of a democracy, we can survive a lot. Bad policy, funky elections, there's a bunch of stuff that we can overcome. We can't overcome the politicization of the criminal justice system, the awesome power of the state. You can't have a situation in which whoever's in charge of the government starts using that to go after their political enemies or reward their friends, right? So another power maybe I'd say would...
This has to be the single greatest statement of hypocrisy in the history of American politics. It was Barack Obama who in a July 2016 Oval Office meeting directed his FBI director, his CIA director, his director of the Office of National Intelligence, the acting Attorney General as well, to essentially fabricate crimes in an effort to destroy Donald Trump when they invented the Russian collusion hoax. This is actually amazing because nobody has weaponized the Justice Department the way Barack Obama has. His administration even boasted about it. Eric Holder, who was Obama's own Attorney General, once proudly described himself as Obama's wingman, saying that he was there with my boy. This is not a conservative caricature. That was the top law enforcement officer in the country describing his relationship with the President of the United States. It was clear that they were operating in unison, but now the shoe's on the other foot. And now that Donald Trump is seeking accountability and justice regarding those who violated both the Constitution and the law in their manic effort to destroy his presidency and then deny him another chance to run for president, they are screaming like stuck pigs. Obama is attempting to revise history here. That's because he's worried. As President Trump's Justice Department pursues investigations involving figures like FBI Director James Comey, New York Attorney General Letitia James, and others, Obama is suddenly acting like he cares about the Department of Justice's independence. What Obama wants is for the deep state to protect its own like it typically has. During the Obama years, Americans watched the Justice Department face controversy as controversy, such as the Fast and Furious operation, where the Attorney General of the United States refused to respond to a subpoena from Congress to talk about that gun-running operation. Holder was held in contempt by Congress, but unlike Peter Navarro, for example, he was never arrested or prosecuted. Yet the media largely treats those years as a normal governance, blaming the victims and helping the Obama regime run cover. Now, but when Trump demands accountability from officials who clearly abused their power and even committed apparent treason in certain cases, suddenly the left declares this to be a constitutional crisis. Obama's warnings might carry more weight if his own attorney general had not openly embraced being his political protector and his hitman. Instead, Obama opened his mouth, and once again he showed himself to be a disingenuous hypocrite. He'll be lucky if he himself is not charged and imprisoned for his role ordering the fake intelligence behind Russiagate. I believe, as do many legal scholars, that the Supreme Court decision that exempts the president from prosecution in the execution of his duties is very clear about the parameter of those duties. Planning the destruction of your successor does not fall within his official duties. So I would argue that Obama, along with Vice President Joe Biden, all of whom were in the room when this seditious conspiracy was hatched that became the Russian collusion hoax, are susceptible to prosecution. And now I'm waiting to see whether Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who last week, with my strong approval, brought an action against FBI Director James Comey, will follow suit, and whether there are prosecutions in the Southern District of Florida, where the seditious conspiracy that begun in the Obama White House takes you through the Russian collusion hoax, takes you through 2 phony impeachments. We know all of this to be true because the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has declassified the government documents proving that everything I just said is true. The other interesting thing here is that Democrats are now sending letters, House Democrats and one Senate Democrat, sending letters to more than a dozen recipients of President Trump's pardons and commutations. This move signals the start, they say, of an oversight effort into whether those clemency decisions involve pay-to-play dynamics, meaning whether pardons were influenced by financial contributions, lobbying, intermediaries, or other forms of influence. This is interesting because I also got an obnoxious inquiry from Reuters. Reuters, by the way, is not a news organization. Reuters is the newsletter of the Democratic National Committee in the far left. So if you had some idea that Reuters was somehow an unbiased news organization, you can dispense with that. They specifically wanted to know whether in my advocacy for a pardon for New York City police officer Michael McMahon, or for Nevada Judge Michelle Fiore, or for Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was framed in the most outrageous trial as a narco trafficker, or my advocacy for a pardon for Ross Ulbricht, who essentially invented the dark internet, or for Sheriff Scott Jenkins, or my advocacy for a pardon for former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. They wanted to know why I didn't register as a lobbyist. Well, there's no law that requires me to do so. And they wanted to know how much I was paid. That number in every one of these cases is zero. I was paid nothing. Why? Because I myself was a victim of the weaponization of our justice system. I myself was sentenced to 4 years in prison for crimes I did not commit. And therefore, I identified with every one of those people. Every one of them is innocent. I'm proud to have advocated for a pardon for them. And I think in every case, President Trump did the right thing. But what's even more outrageous is the fact that they don't seem to have any interest whatsoever in how the pardons for Dr. Anthony Fauci or Adam Schiff or Liz Cheney or Benny Thompson or any of the other Democrats who were pardoned by Joe Biden by AutoPen on their way out the door. Now we learn that the disappearance during Biden's administration of more than 300 clemency warrants, the official records of pardons and commutations, which could invite further scrutiny of the 46th president's handling of the president's most awesome power, the power to pardon, have suddenly disappeared. The documents went missing when the office was under the supervision of one Elizabeth Oyer, a Biden administration official who, in an appearance before Congress and in a New York Times opinion piece and an interview of 60 Minutes, condemned the Trump administration for mishandling the pardon process of which she had been the dedicated steward. According to the New York Sun, that exclusively obtained internal documents that shed light on an internal investigation that was conducted into missing clemency documents. There were 301 original signed and sealed clemency warrants from the last 3 presidential administrations. A source said that the current administration tells The Sun that the original paper copies of these warrants have gone missing. They cannot be found. That assessment was made in a memorandum from November of 2022 to a Department of Justice official, one Jacqueline Palucci, from Ms. Elizabeth Oyer, marked confidential. So the investigation into the missing pardons, including the review of pertinent emails, team chats, memorandum, and so on, all completely missing. The hundreds of missing pardon and clemency documents predated the polarizing ones, including the pardon of Hunter Biden, General Mark Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and members of the House January 6th committee issued at the end of Biden's term. They also predate Mr. Biden's commutation of the sentence of 37 death row inmates who were convicted of murder, drug dealing, rape, and other heinous violent crimes. Interestingly enough, none of those people applied for a pardon. Republicans and President Trump have scrutinized the use of an auto pen to add his John Hancock to those documents. Ms. Oyer, who did not respond to a request from the New York Sun for comment, writes that the clemency warrants are the official records of presidential grants of clemency in the form of pardons and commutations. Each is on long parchment paper bearing an official seal in gold and the official signature of the granting president. The Constitution ordains that the president shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. The Sun also obtained a notification of termination from May of 2023 to the Pardon Office's erstwhile Records and Information Manager, Malawi Wells, from the Deputy Pardon Attorney General, one Kira Gillespie. Ms. Wells was fired following an investigation into the missing documents after she was determined to be the last person known to be in possession of the warrants that subsequently disappeared. Ms. Oyer was appointed pardon attorney in April of 2022, a role that does not require Senate confirmation, was fired by the Trump administration in May of 2025 after she claimed she refused to recommend restoring Mel Gibson's gun rights. She has since emerged now as a harsh critic of the 47th president, Donald Trump, telling 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley that all of the traditional rules and procedures pertaining to pardons that have been thrown out the window. Evidently, that doesn't include losing all the documents that detail them. This administration appears to be working around the Justice Department rather than with the Justice Department. Ms. Oyer should know that by law, you do not have to apply for a pardon with the Department of Justice, and that the President of the United States has that unilateral right. So we're calling out Democrat hypocrisy today on the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
Roger Stone here. Every day you wait, your money loses value, but gold and silver don't follow those same rules. American Sovereign Bullion gives you access to a nationwide wholesaler network, helping you secure aggressive pricing on real physical metals. Call 844-272-2428 now to get your free gold and silver guide to learn how to protect your wealth with physical gold and silver, delivered right to your door or with a gold IRA. Visit ASBGold.com. That's ASBGold.com for your free gold and silver guide today.
Picture this. Me, Reese Witherspoon, in London, ordering fish and chips so often they might start wrapping me in paper. I'm traveling with my Wells Fargo Autograph Journey card, so I earn rewards wherever I book travel. 5 times points with hotels, 4 times with airlines, 3 times on restaurants and other travel, and 1 point on other purchases. Imagine getting rewarded for eating a toad in the hole. Wait, what is a toad in a hole?
Visit wellsfargo.com/autographjourney. Terms apply.
Amazon presents Jeff versus Taco Truck Salsa. Whether it's Verde, Roja, or the orange one. For Jeff, trying any salsa is like playing Russian roulette. with a flamethrower. Luckily, Jeff saved with Amazon and stocked up on antacids, ginger tea, and milk. Habanero? More like habanero, yes. Save the everyday with Amazon.
The Ad Council.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. In a major blow for election integrity, a federal judge in Georgia has refused to order the FBI to return 2020 election ballots and materials that were seized in a raid on the Fulton County Election Board warehouse, keeping alive a federal investigation into one of the most controversial election jurisdictions in the United States. U.S. District Judge Jean-Paul Boulay ruled that Fulton County officials failed to prove the FBI acted with callous disregard for the county's rights when agents executed a court-authorized search warrant earlier this year. I point out that officials with the Fulton County Board of Elections admitted under oath before a state Senate committee that there were at least 35,000 votes cast in Fulton County that included no serial numbers and no signatures. That, to me, is probable cause. The FBI seized physical ballots, tabulator tapes, ballot images, and voter rolls from the 2020 stolen presidential election. Fulton County, home to Deep Blue Atlanta, was central to the rigging, as troubling abnormalities have resulted in the floor being cleared of all poll challengers. In other words, if you were a Republican poll watcher, you were removed. Suspicious video appeared to show ballots being examined and processed by poll workers during the time that there were no observers. We've never gotten any answers about this, and unfortunately the Rhino Republican leaders in Georgia have been content to just look the other way. Now, Fulton County argued that the search violated its constitutional authority to run elections and was a gross federal intrusion. The judge rejected that claim and said the county had not shown irreparable harm. The investigation reportedly involves possible violations of federal election law, including fair election protections and record retention requirements. The judge also noted witness claims that ballot images may have been modified as recently as 2024. Democrats and establishment officials insist that Georgia's 2020 results were settled. They've been saying, move along, there's nothing to see here, essentially for 6 years. But now the Trump administration is not letting the issue die. What happened in 2020 was a grotesque farce that put even third world dictatorships to shame. It must never be allowed to happen again. We must get to the bottom of this fraud, throw those who broke the law in jail after a fair trial, of course, and make sure the forces who ordered it never do it yet again. This was a particularly interesting raid. Some in the Senate, for example, Virginia Senator Mark Warner, a man caught red-handed involved in the Russian collusion hoax, was deeply upset that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was present when the raid went down. She was there because the President of the United States directed her to be there. It's time to get to the bottom of what happened in the 2020 election. If you believe that Joe Biden ran a 20% average higher total in the African-American precincts in most of the urban centers of America, well, then I have a bridge in Brooklyn I want to talk to you about buying. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to Stone Zone. We'll be right back with more. It is all important that we have fair, honest elections. Without them, we will not have a country. President Trump remains committed to this, and so am I. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Learn.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. Well, the then U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr assured us that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide in a New York jail. I've always been very suspicious about that. First of all, you have the fact that the very respected New York medical examiner Michael Baden was retained by Epstein's family to examine Epstein's body, and he said that the broken bones in Epstein's neck were not consistent with hanging. I note that Baden had personally performed autopsies on over 1,000 hanging victims, or those who died from hanging. Secondarily, there is, of course, the question that why would he retain the very well-known criminal defense attorney David Schoen on Thursday if he was going to kill himself on Saturday? Now you add to the fact that the two prison guards who were in charge of monitoring him both fell asleep, and the cameras that should have been monitoring Epstein 24/7 just happened to be malfunctioning. Now, to me, the whole thing seems extraordinarily fishy. And now an alleged suicide note from the deceased pedophile Jeffrey Epstein has surfaced, raising new questions in a case that still has left the American people with many such questions. The note, published by the New York Times, reportedly says they investigated for months and found nothing, and adds, "It is a treat to be able to choose one's time to say goodbye." Epstein, of course, was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell in August of 2019 after being arrested on sex trafficking charges. The note was reportedly recovered by his former cellmate, Nicholas Tartaglione, who was a former police officer later convicted of killing 4 people. Tartaglione said he found it inside a graphic novel that the two men had shared and turned it over to his attorneys to show that he was not responsible for Epstein's death. The note had apparently remained sealed in court files connected to Tartaglione's case. Epstein had previously been placed with Tartaglione after an earlier apparent suicide attempt, and then later removed after claiming Tartaglione tried to kill him. President Trump signed legislation in November of 2025 requiring the release of the Epstein files, and millions of documents have surfaced in the months since, including flight logs and disturbing materials. Among those things that have surfaced are over 1,900 emails between Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein. It's very clear that Bannon, according to those emails, was not only harshly critical of Donald Trump, actually supporting his removal under the 25th Amendment, but more precisely was working closely with Epstein to rehabilitate the child sex trafficker's public image after he was convicted of sex crimes in Florida back in 2005. He was then, of course, ultimately indicted in 2019 by the Trump administration on 2 counts, 1 count of child sex trafficking and a 2nd count of conspiracy to engage in child sex trafficking. And therefore, I have to wonder when the FBI Director Kash Patel says, as he has said publicly, that he has seen no evidence whatsoever that Epstein engaged in child sex trafficking other than trafficking children for his own sexual exploitation. What was shown to the grand jury in 2019? I mean, grand juries don't indict people without being shown some evidence. So that statement makes no sense to me. More importantly, however, efforts by then Attorney General Pam Bondi to release everything shown to the grand jury in 2019, as well as the material shown to a Florida grand jury back in 2005, were denied by judges, Democrat judges. So the public remains unconvinced about this case, as do I. With the federal government lying to us for so long, lying to us about the Vietnam War, lying to us about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, lying to us about the assassination of Senator Robert Kennedy, lying to us about the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, lying to us about the COVID-19 pandemic, it's not surprising that the American people doubt they're being told the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. And as Epstein's pedophile network remains unindicted, charged with no crimes, and free to continue to roam the streets, it's difficult to say we have the rule of law in this country. It's not just regarding Epstein. It extends, as I say, to the COVID-19 genocide crew led by America's Mengele, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Not to mention the Russian collusion collaborators, which went all the way up to Barack Hussein Obama himself. The guy who earlier in the show I mentioned is now moaning about the weaponization of the criminal justice system when nobody weaponized it like he did. It's interesting because President John Adams, President John F. Kennedy, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and President Abraham Lincoln all very specifically directed their Department of Justice to indict certain individuals. And there are some legal scholars who argue that the president, as the chief law enforcement officer in the executive branch, has the full authority to do so. So instead, he would not get ahead of the president. I think that it's amazing that none of these people are behind bars when they all should have been locked up. It's amazing to me how quickly they were able to frame me for lying before Congress regarding Russian collusion that never actually happened, and how they successfully suppressed Robert Mueller's final report when my defense attorneys in my own trial asked for that report. By the way, the Constitution says that anyone who's criminally charged is entitled to see all evidence against them. Judge Amy Berman Jackson refused to give my defense attorneys Robert Mueller's final report because in the copy released to the public, all portions regarding me had been fully and completely redacted. The judge said that she would review the document in her chambers, essentially in camera, and give my lawyers those sections which pertain to me. She gave us a small amount of information that didn't make much sense, but she seems somehow to have missed page 168. We only know about this because a federal judge, based on a lawsuit brought by BuzzFeed, ordered the full unredacted report to be released by the Justice Department. And the day they chose to do that by press release was Election Day in 2020 at midnight. So in other words, the busiest media day of the year, in an effort to make sure that nobody noticed. You can see why I'm somewhat skeptical about this suicide note and skeptical about anything that the federal government tells us. Meanwhile, border czar Tom Homan has stated that President Trump is being lobbied hard by certain advisors who are urging him to offer some form of legal status to illegal migrants. This prospect should set off alarm bells across the country. Asked by CBS whether he would support a compromise giving legal status to millions of illegal immigrants who are otherwise law-abiding, Homan said he would not necessarily rule that out. Instead, he said he would not get ahead of the president, adding the discussions are happening inside the administration. Now, that answer may give pause to some MAGA patriots throughout the country. On the other hand, I do think that if someone has been in the country illegally for 20 years, has paid taxes during that entire time, has been gainfully employed, has broken no rules, well, then I think there should be some accommodation made for such people. I think the priority when it comes to deporting people should be focused on dangerous illegal criminals. Those are people who have a criminal record either in their country of origin or here in the United States. President Trump was elected on a mandate to secure our border. He's certainly done that, to deport illegal aliens, to protect American workers, and to end the cheap labor pipeline that enriches corporate interests while crushing wages, housing affordability, schools, hospitals, and public safety. Amnesty, no matter what polite label Washington wants to put on it, would be a disaster that would undermine the tremendous economic and national security progress of the Trump administration. But I don't think those who have been here legally and have broken no laws should be treated the same as, say, violent gangbangers. I would like to tell every American who played by the rules their government values foreign labor and donor class demands over citizenship. It would also potentially mint millions of new potential Democrat voters. That's what this is really all about. The reason Joe Biden had an open borders policy was he and his party intended ultimately to citizenize all of those people, paving the way for socialism, misery, and squalor. Business groups are already pushing schemes like the so-called Dignidad bill pushed by Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar and by Liberal Republican Mike Lawler from the Mid-Hudson Valley, which would keep cheap migrant labor flowing for industries that refuse to invest in American workers and allow them to keep wages depressed. Mass deportations is not a slogan. It's the fundamental promise that united President Trump's coalition. Anyone inside the administration pushing legal status for illegal migrants is pushing political poison, in a sense, and national decline. Yet, at the same time, I myself am torn. I do think we have to be reasonable about those who have been here, once again, for 20 years or more, never broken the law, paid taxes, and lived as in a civil society. Any special interest lobbyists promoting amnesty should be persona non grata at the White House and Mar-a-Lago, according to some. We need to let Tom Homan loose, allow him to remove as many of the dangerous illegals as possible, and keep the promise to the voters. But again, the priority must go to those who are here illegally and have a criminal record in their country of origin or here in the United States. I saw Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday, minutes before he left, to go to Rome to meet with Pope Leo at the Vatican in a significant step toward bringing the Trump administration and the Catholic Church back into closer alignment after recent tensions that were exacerbated in the fake news by biased coverage. Rubio spent roughly 2 hours at the Vatican meeting with both the Pope and Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State. The State Department said the discussions focused on the Middle East, the Western Hemisphere, humanitarian efforts, religious freedom, peace, and human dignity. This matters because the Catholic Church remains one of the most important moral and diplomatic institutions in the world, with Republicans, including many Trump administration, have shown respect for Catholics, Catholic voters, and the Church's long role in defending life, faith, family, and religious liberty. But the Catholic Church, once a bulwark in the fight against communism, has moved decidedly to the left. The previous Pope insisted that, for example, the Bible condemned private property rights. I've gone through the Bible, I've gone through every page. You can't find any place where it says anything of the kind. President Trump, after all, is the most pro-life president in history, and the Supreme Court justice appointed by him resulted in the uprooting of Roe v. Wade, ending the scourge of legalized abortion across the entire. Now a practicing Catholic, making a natural emissary at an important moment. Vice President J.D. Vance is also a Catholic convert, and conservative Catholics remain a substantial and integral part of the Republican coalition. Indeed, it is the increase among Catholic votes beginning in 1952 that ends the old Roosevelt coalition. It really manifests itself most sharply in 1972 when Richard Nixon carried 49 of 50 states. It is the backbone of Ronald Reagan's coalition to take back the White House from Jimmy Carter in 1980. And Donald Trump is the first Republican to win an absolute majority of the Catholic vote in both his 2016 election and his incredible 2024 comeback. So Rubio's visit suggests that both sides understand the stakes are too high for division. The Vatican and Washington share major concerns, such as helping persecuted Christians, achieving a lasting peace in the Middle East, as well as freedom for Cuba and Venezuela, increasing humanitarian aid for the impoverished, and promoting religious freedom throughout the world. This meeting should be seen as a reset. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
With Roger Stone.
He likes politics and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone. Where's Roger?
When you go beyond great, you find greater. Like the 2027 Kia Telluride Turbo Hybrid with 564-mile range, 329 horsepower, and multi-terrain mode. Because there are always greater mountains to climb and greater challenges to face. The first ever Kia Telluride Turbo Hybrid. Built for the greater. Learn more at kia.com.
If you're a QuickBooks customer looking to grow your business without the growing pains, you need the Intuit ERP.
Upgrade to Intuit Enterprise Suite in a matter of hours. It's the AI-native ERP from the makers of QuickBooks. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Bring a date, your squad, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
By Brady and the Ad Council.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. I cannot overemphasize the extent to which the recent Supreme Court decision regarding the fact that you cannot use race as a factor in the drawing of congressional districts is going to affect the 2026 election. The Tennessee House has now approved a new congressional districting plan that could actually eliminate the state's lone Democratic seat in Washington. After days of debate in a special session, the House passed the proposal 64-24. The map would divide Democrat-controlled Memphis into 3 congressional districts, reshaping a seat that has long been held by a Democrat. It was a Democrat stronghold under the guise of minority-majority rules that were recently declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Democrats immediately called the move racist, which may have caused Republicans to flinch in the past, but not so much anymore after Virginia Democrats put on the ballot a measure that would change that congressional delegation from 6-5 Democrats to Republican to 10-1 Democrats to Republican. That is being reviewed for its constitutionality as we speak. This Tennessee proposal now heads to the state Senate, where there is a massive supermajority of Republicans. If approved, it would then go to Governor Bill Lee, who's already signaled that he would support the new map. Governor Lee said lawmakers have a responsibility to ensure that Tennessee's districts accurately reflect the will of Tennessee voters and remain fair, legal, and defensible. The fight comes as both parties now are battling over congressional maps ahead of the 2026 midterms. Republicans have finally moved aggressively in states like Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama to have the actual maps reflect the population. Democrats pursued their own map changes in places like California, Colorado, and, as I just said, Virginia. So the outrage from the left rings pretty hollow. They're just mad that the Republicans will finally be playing the game the same way the Democrats have done so. In fact, Democrats have already gerrymandered in states like Illinois and Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and others to ensure that there are no Republican seats in those states. There's not many more places they can do so. By the way, the term gerrymandering, was named after a Democrat legislator in Massachusetts whose last name was Jerry. How appropriate. Tennessee is a solidly conservative state. Its congressional map should not be distorted to preserve a Democrat seat by default. No participation trophies for the Democrats. They will get nothing. That's the law. And the hypocritical cries of racism and unfairness should frankly just be completely ignored. Well, for millions of families, inflation is still a problem. They're getting hit hard with grocery bills, rent payments, gas prices, foreclosures, and shrinking paychecks. Young Americans are being hit particularly hard. Many under 40 have watched the dream of home ownership slip away as housing prices soar, entry-level jobs tighten, and everyday costs keep climbing. A New Generation Lab survey showed that 84% of adults between the ages of 18 and 24 view the economy as bad or terrible. Those among 25 to 29, that number is 81%. So this is not just a youth problem. Another survey found that 78% of Americans do not feel financially secure, and nearly three-quarters say they may never have enough money to achieve the American dream. Foreclosures are also rising. This, I think, is due to the fact that the deep tax cuts and the other regulatory changes have not been accompanied by an interest rate cut. And I saw this before. Under Ronald Reagan, we made these changes, but they had not kicked in by 1982, and the party received a stunning defeat in the midterm elections, only to have come roaring back like the economy in 1984. Situation here may be analogous. I would point out, though, that food prices were on the way down, gas prices were down sharply, and home ownership was up, as was mortgage applications. So I believe the economy is moving in the right direction. The question is, will it have taken enough effect by the off-year elections? It's too early to say, but those who say the Republicans will definitely lose the 2026 elections don't understand how volatile our elections is, don't understand the impact of this congressional redistricting, and don't understand that in American politics, a week is a lifetime. I'm Roger Stone. You've been listening to the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
77 WABC and Bergen Newbridge Medical Center honor the life of legendary broadcaster and our friend, Ernie Anastas.
Hi, it's Ernie Anastas. You know, your thoughts can affect how you feel. Bergen Newbridge Medical Center is the largest hospital in New Jersey, providing comprehensive, equitable, compassionate, and high-quality emergency inpatient and outpatient medical care, plus mental health services and substance use disorder treatment. The Bergen Newbridge team can address your total health needs in one convenient location. Call 201-225-7130 for an appointment or newbridgehealth.org.